Hey everybody, this is Eddie with the Overton Clinic. I'd like to talk to you today about how I got into neurosomatic therapy and what my inspiration was. And it's a very special story to me, and hopefully it'll help you as well. One of the things that I think is important in life is that you take tragedies and you turn them into blessings. That's so difficult to do, but it's such an important thing to think about. My daughter, Zoe, experienced a very difficult birth. She had to be pulled out of the birthing canal because she was going to suffocate. And in doing so, the doctors saved her life. There's no question about it. She was purple when she was born. They had to resuscitate her and do all kinds of procedures to make sure that she was going to survive. So I don't blame the doctors for what they did, but in the process of pulling her out, they had to, and I saw the whole thing, they had to shimmy her out essentially by grabbing her cranium this way and then twisting her head to pull her out. I didn't know anything about anatomy, I didn't know anything about neurosomatic therapy at that time, but I knew something was obviously very, very wrong. After Zoe was born, instead of giving her to Mel, her mother, they whisked her off. They took off to another room. Something was really wrong, I had no idea what it was. They were resuscitating her, they were saving her life. In doing so, however, they distorted the position of her C1, C2, and they distorted her cranium. I didn't know all this at the time, but I did know that she was having delays. My wife and I were both educators, and we understood how our children were supposed to develop. So there were delays in Zoe's speech, there were delays in Zoe's walking and hand strength, everything imaginable. So we had her going through multiple therapies to help her with that. At age 4, we decided to move to Florida when Zoe was age 4, and that was to try to help her as much as possible, to simplify our lives and make sure that she had the support that she needed. Well, that was incredibly fortuitous because there was this thing called neurosomatic therapy in Florida that wasn't anywhere else at the time. And so we discovered neurosomatic therapy through a friend, and I took my daughter to go see the founder of neurosomatic therapy, which is Paul St. John. Paul St. John lives and treats in Clearwater. So Paul, this was 22 years ago, looked at my 4-year-old daughter, and he had me touch the side of her head. And he said, feel this side and then feel that side. And I didn't notice it before because it was under her hair, but she had an indentation in her cranium on this side that she did not have on that side. And so Paul explained to me that probably what happened is that as the doctor grabbed her head, he put his thumb into the side of her cranium trying to pull her out. Well, that's her speech centers, and that's part of the reason why Zoe was having trouble using her right hand, because the left side of the brain controls the right side of the body, and had trouble speaking as well. So as Paul explained this to me, I was like, how did you even know this? How is this even possible? It's part of his assessment that he could see these things. He was actually measuring her cranium. And so Paul did a relatively simple treatment. I didn't quite understand at the time what was happening, but now I do. He worked on her C1 and C2. He worked on her cranium, mobilized the bones of her cranium to take the pressure off of her brain. In doing so, he allowed that part of her brain to function properly. Again, I had no idea at the time, but I do understand now what was happening. So 3 days later, I was frustrated about something, and Zoe at age 4, did 3 things she had never done before. She saw that I was frustrated and angry, and she looked me in the eyes, she patted me on the back, and she spoke her first complete sentence to me, trying to console me. I almost dropped at the time I was playing a really expensive instrument, a $10,000 instrument. I almost dropped my instrument to the ground, my guitar to the ground, and I picked Zoe up with tears in my eyes. I couldn't believe that she spoke to me those first words. That was 3 days after Paul worked on her. There's no question in my mind at the time that was what did it. After that point, I took Zoe back to see Paul every week because she was advancing so amazingly. Her other therapist, speech therapist, fine motor therapist, gross motor therapist, all of them started to see a change in Zoe, and I hadn't mentioned what was going on with Paul. Frankly, I was having trouble understanding it at the time. But each and every one of them said that Zoe was developing so much more quickly, so much so that they had to reevaluate her because in the span of about 3 or 4 weeks, she reached her 6-month goals. So they had to reevaluate her to continue her therapy. until finally she graduated from all those therapies. She did absolutely amazingly. So that is my inspiration. Today, I treat babies, I treat children as well as adults, and I almost feel like I'm paying that forward. So I can tell people this story and say, well, here's a tragedy that happened in my life. Maybe that can turn into a blessing in your family. So that is my story, my inspiration for becoming a nurse somatic therapist.